Danny Kennedy arrived home late that night, weary and anxious. He felt as skittish as a lost kitten, always on edge, ready for anything. His world could turn upside down at any moment. Was he going to flee from this danger? No. Was he going to hide from this threat? No way. He craved it. More than anything, he desired clarity. His suspense lay in the waiting. What did they want from him? And how soon could he act? The Grand Knights of the Royal Order of UR, a secretive society with immense power and connections beyond common knowledge, were known as the magistratus to those in the know. Founded in the Middle Ages, they supposedly shaped the course of history, influencing the rise of great civilizations. Danny received an invitation to join from an old college friend, Richie Land, whom he hadn't seen in years. Each member was responsible for recruiting another, and previous attempts by Richie had failed. Danny didn't mind being a last resort. This opportunity was ideal for him. A natural networker and social predator, he thrived on connections. As an insurance agent, Danny's success depended on relationships, not cold calls. The magistratus seemed like a dream come true, promising the connections that could skyrocket his career. He stayed awake at night, dizzy with anticipation. The induction ceremony was ceremonial and slow, with candles, robes, and cryptic language. Danny simply had to recite a few lines. However, he didn't anticipate the trial that followed, the trial of brotherhood. Whenever called upon by the order, members were obliged to assist without question. Brotherhood trumped all: family, country, business. The trial was Danny's final test. He awaited instructions, nervously anticipating when and what his task would be. He yearned to move forward into his new, successful life. When would he receive his orders? It had been 3 days already. He knew he would be kept in the dark, but this was driving him crazy. Pacing his apartment like a madman, he muttered to himself, still in his suit, sweat staining through. Suddenly, his phone rang, jolting Danny out of his anxious, claustrophobic state. He cautiously approached the phone. Was he afraid? No. Hello, he shouted boldly into the receiver. Silence greeted him. Hello, he called again. Only faint static answered from the other end. Could he hear breathing? Was someone there? A deep, gravelly voice spoke. We are very disappointed in your progress. What? What do you mean? Danny demanded. Is this the order? Hello? Click went the phone. The line was dead. Hello! Danny shouted in frustration. Hello? Progress? How could he have made progress? They hadn't even given him instructions. Maybe it wasn't the order after all. Maybe it was a wrong number. No! Don't be ridiculous. It had to be the order. But he had no clue what they meant. What was happening? He considered calling Richie for help, but hesitated. It was against the rules. No contact with the order or its members during the trial of brotherhood. Failure to comply meant failure overall. At least, that's what he remembered. It sounded right, didn't it? Though he could be mistaken. What did they want him to do? Wait for instructions, right? Wasn't that in the brochure? Hadn't someone told him that? Maybe he should return to the hall or something. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Danny froze. Was it them? Of course it was. Should he answer? The knock repeated. He dashed to the door. No. He shouldn't. Yes, he should. They were trying to reach him. He had to answer. No. Yes. No. What should he do? He had to take action. Undoing the latches and locks, he cautiously cracked the door open. No one was there. He swung the door wide, peering down the empty hall. Both directions were deserted, except for paint cans from ongoing renovations. Everything seemed out of place, except... He stepped forward and kicked something, a small, unmarked brown box. From the order, probably. At last, a clue. Danny brought it inside. What could it be? Should he open it? Maybe it was a trap, he hadn't been instructed to open it. They might kick him out if he did. Oh God, he agonized over second-guessing himself. Grabbing a knife, he sliced open the taped seal. Carefully, he unwrapped the tissues and revealed the box's contents. Inside were a pair of red high-heel shoes. What on earth did that mean? Women's shoes? He searched the box again for any hint, any scrap of information. He was so distraught he found himself pulling at his hair. What did the person on the phone say? We are very disappointed in your progress. That was his only clue. Then it hit him. This was an initiation. Initiation was the key word. Like a fraternity. In college, he'd heard stories about guys dressing as girls for frat initiations. But this couldn't be the same, could it? No, it didn't make sense. But the evidence was right there, women's shoes and the words, "We are very disappointed in your progress." It must mean he was supposed to dress as a woman. That was his task, his trial. He had the instructions. Now he had to act. It wasn't worth risking his job, so he called in sick, maybe for a while. That night, he ordered clothes, a wig, and lipstick, all rushed to his apartment. The next morning, he anxiously awaited the deliveries. Positioned by his door, ready to grab them discreetly, he heard a knock. But it wasn't his door, it was the neighbor's. He poked his head out cautiously. "Hey," Danny whispered to the delivery man. "Excuse me, sir." "Are you talking to me, sir?" the delivery guy retorted. Just his luck. "Yes," he tried to say quietly. "Are those packages for apartment 23B? Marianne's boutique." "Are you sure?" "These are for apartment 23B. The delivery guy checked the door, but the numbers had been removed for painting. "They look like women's clothes, sir." Danny wanted to throttle the guy. "Are you D.G. Kennedy? Apartment 23B. Trying to keep his voice down, Danny managed to yell, "Yes." "I see," the delivery guy drawled. "Sign here, sir." Danny snatched the electronic pad and hastily scrawled something resembling his signature. The delivery man cleared his throat pointedly. Danny tossed the pad at him and slammed the door shut. Opening the package, he sorted through the unfamiliar items. He applied the lipstick, squeezed into the shoes, stuffed socks into his shirt, and donned the wig. Stumbling around his apartment, he wrestled the oversized floral dress over his head. It was now or never. He couldn't back out. He planned to stroll around the building a couple of times and then retreat to his apartment. Just enough to be seen. Danny headed for the freight elevator. Nervously, he circled the block once, walking awkwardly. He kept his gaze straight ahead, avoiding eye contact. It was a big city, people had seen stranger things and didn't bother him. He darted back into his building through the rear delivery entrance, relieved he hadn't encountered anyone he knew. Collapsing onto the couch, Danny exhaled heavily, breathing like a marathon runner. Then the phone rang. "We are very disappointed in your progress," the voice declared. "What?" Danny exclaimed into the phone, but it was already dead. Danny shook the receiver in frustration. Wasn't that enough? He replaced the handset and walked to the mirror. The truth hit him hard. He looked absurd. Pantyhose bunched at his ankles, smeared lipstick, and a fake chest that looked ridiculous. He wasn't fooling anyone, he needed professional help. Danny was satisfied with the outcome. Looking in the mirror, he could still see a hint of himself reflected, albeit softened and concealed. The makeup was a tad flashy, and his strong features remained prominent. He did resemble a drag queen somewhat, which was exactly what he anticipated when he booked an appointment at Makeovers by Violetta in the gay district. He'd splurged a few $100s for the full treatment, groomed brows, pierced ears, and a convincing new wig. Now, he resembled a mix of a Vegas showgirl and a construction worker, but it was what he'd expected and worth every penny. Danny confidently strolled down the street, taking it slow in his heels as he paraded back and forth on the sidewalk outside his apartment. Onlookers might have mistaken him for a cast member from La Cage aux Falls, adorned in his glittering red gown, long chandelier earrings, and flashy costume jewelry. His nails were even painted bright red and extended an inch long. It was outrageous, but Danny didn't mind as long as the magistratus noticed. After about 20 minutes, he felt he'd made his point. Then, from his bedazzled purse, his cell phone rang, startling him so much his wig slipped askew. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "We are very disappointed in your progress," the gravelly voice intoned. "Damn it!" Danny shouted to the bystanders. "What do they want from me?" He restrained himself from hurling the phone to the ground. People stared at him. Then he had an epiphany. His voice. It still sounded distinctly male. "Hello," he crooned. "Kennedy residence, how may I assist you?" The voice was gentle, soft, and polished. Danny had dedicated 3 straight days to perfecting it. He'd found online courses on developing a feminine voice and squeezed in every spare moment to practice. He continued to hum, warming up his vocal cords. "Hello," he tried again, nearly nailing it. Danny kept talking, casually. "Hello, coffee mug," he said. "Hello, shoes." He still wore the pumps, anticipating they might check any moment, so he wore them all day. Surprisingly nimble now. At last, the phone rang. "Hello?" "Kennedy residence," Danny greeted, flawless. This had to be the key. They didn't like his voice when he answered before. With the dress, the appearance, and the voice, how could he not meet their expectations? "We are very disappointed in your progress," the voice stated. Click, and the line went dead. Danny seethed with frustration. Danny believed he had everything under control now. There was just one remaining flaw in his disguise, and he was certain he had it sorted out this time. For a while, he felt everything slipping away: success, money, power. But now that he'd figured things out, he was in a good position. Whatever that meant. No wonder he wasn't making progress quickly enough. He carried some weight. At 5'9" and almost 155 pounds, he wasn't fat for a man, but for a woman, it was too much. Way too much. None of the outfits he'd ordered over the past 2 weeks fit properly. They were all plus-sized to conceal his masculine proportions. If he wanted to wear a real dress and pass as a woman convincingly, he needed to lose weight fast. He started with basic workouts, which weren't fast enough. Then, he tried weight loss supplements and extreme celebrity diets, still not fast enough. Finally, he opted for a minor liposuction procedure, not a significant amount, just enough to trim his waist down. He'd wanted to shed a few pounds anyway. As a result of his efforts, he had dropped to a svelte 115 pounds. Post-surgery, he wore a compression garment for a couple of weeks. They offered 2 types, male and female. Naturally, he chose the female one. It was exactly what he needed. His waist now measured 22 inches, and the doctor assured him it would become even slimmer once the swelling subsided. Perhaps it was his imagination, but his buttocks and hips seemed fuller, as the garment redistributed his fat to create a more feminine silhouette. It looked perfect. The entire procedure had been expensive, but it was undoubtedly worthwhile to make progress with the order. Exiting his building, Danny was dressed in his new, flattering brandy-colored peplum skirt set, showcasing his slimmed-down figure. Someone from the order had better be watching because he looked fantastic. He'd spent the whole afternoon running errands, ensuring that whoever needed to see him did so. He hadn't wasted his recovery time either. He'd set up a new bank account and credit card under the name Kendall Kennedy and had even obtained a fake ID under that alias, just in case it was required. He wasn't taking any chances. There was no way he'd get caught off guard, figuratively or literally. Danny clattered down the street and hailed a taxi. When one refused to stop, he jumped into traffic, waving his arms frantically. Finally, one screeched to a halt. Wrestling with his tight, floor-length skirt, he struggled to get into the car, eventually hoisting himself up by grabbing onto the roof and contorting his bound legs inside. He ended up landing awkwardly on his side, his curly wig slipping off. Quickly readjusting it, he sat upright, slamming the doors shut behind him. Then his cell phone rang. "We are very disappointed in your progress." Dreams of his future had turned into living nightmares for Danny. He could vividly imagine the success he had tirelessly pursued slipping away. The magistrates were not pleased. He could almost see them, dark, shadowy figures trailing him everywhere, lurking in alleyways, just out of sight. They whispered, disappointed, shaking their heads. And still, he couldn't decipher their demands. What did they want from him? Then, he recalled the last phone call, the moment he struggled foolishly to enter a cab. That was the stumbling block. He hadn't been behaving like a woman. That must be the key. Despite sounding like a woman and dressing the part, he hadn't truly embodied it. So he researched and discovered Dr. Paige Morgan, a psychologist specializing in aiding transgender men transitioning to women, including hypnotherapy, a crucial detail for Danny. It had cost him more money than he'd wanted to spend, but eventually, the doctor agreed to apply both her expertise and hypnotherapy skills to Danny's transformation. Money could buy a lot, even professional integrity. How long could he keep throwing money at this problem? It had to pay off big. 2 weeks of intensive hypnotherapy sessions had worked wonders. Danny felt invigorated by the changes he saw in himself, the way he walked, talked, sat, and used his hands. Catching his reflection in the mirror, it seemed like he was a different person altogether. Gone was his stoic facade, now, his smiling lips and bright, open eyes exuded warmth. He held his head high, stood tall, and moved with grace. It all conveyed unmistakable femininity, and he could feel everything finally falling into place. "Thank you, oh thank you so much, Paige," Danny effused. The doctor beamed with satisfaction. The transformation was remarkable. "Kendall, please. It takes immense dedication to achieve such rapid progress. You should be proud of yourself," she said. Danny had concocted a story to share with the doctor, avoiding any mention of the order, which was strictly forbidden. Instead, he crafted a narrative around his long-suppressed desire to embrace his true identity as a woman. The first time he spun this tale for the doctor, he almost burst out laughing. Thankfully, he managed to pass it off as tears of emotional release, the anguish of never being able to express the real me. It still amused him whenever he thought about it. With a hand against his chest, Danny waved off the doctor's praise modestly. "I couldn't have done it without you, Paige. You've been absolutely wonderful throughout this entire journey. It's been transformative. I can't thank you enough." He shook his head, enjoying the sensation of his natural hair, now shoulder-length with extensions and styled neatly. His once visible beard was no longer a concern, thanks to his meticulous shaving regimen. Surely, twice-daily shaving could start to affect hair follicles, right? "Now before you go, I want to make sure you're still taking the pills, and promise me you'll come see me every few weeks for a chat and catch up," the doctor insisted. "Oh, please, Paige. You'll never get rid of me." Danny giggled. "But I thought the pills were just for these sessions." The doctor shook her head. "No, Kendall, you need to keep taking those pills. All my transitioning patients take them." Danny was puzzled. Weren't the pills just to relax him for the hypnotherapy? What else could they be for? "How long, Paige?" Well, go see Dr. Thompson next door, the doctor replied, handing Danny a card. He can give you subdermal implants that'll last you the rest of the year. Danny liked the sound of that. He'd visit Dr. Thompson right away. That's very kind of you, Paige. I really appreciate everything. After getting the subdermal implants from Dr. Thompson, Danny decided to treat himself to a new outfit to celebrate completing therapy. He was curious to see what he'd choose now that he had the mind of a woman. Disappointingly, he found himself still drawn to the same style of clothes he'd have picked as Danny. Exiting the store, he wore a red sheath dress that fell just above the knee, paired with his trusty red pumps. He was surprised to find the size 10 a bit loose now, though still too big for an 8. Clearly, more workouts were in order. Danny had also picked up a smart purse, some bracelets, a necklace, and a cute brooch. Paying for everything with his Kendall Kennedy credit card, he reasoned it was just as well, as he'd misplaced most of his Danny cards, probably still in his wallet, wherever that was. As he loaded his bags into the taxi, swinging his legs gracefully into the seat, he spoke in the feminine voice he'd grown accustomed to. Bridgewood Tower Apartments, please. Then his cell phone rang. Maybe it was the girls from the fitness club, Paige, or Daisy, his hairdresser. He removed an earring to answer. Hello, he said softly. We are very disappointed in your progress, the voice intoned. What? Danny screeched into the phone. I've done everything possible. The dial tone felt like a death sentence. Danny seethed. He stamped his heels on the taxi's floor and shrieked in frustration. He had worked tirelessly, done everything, absolutely everything, except... Wait a minute. That was the test. How far would he go? That's what the magistratus wanted to see. Did he have the commitment? The commitment to give up everything to join the Grand Knights of the Royal Order of UR? Okay. Change of plans, Danny told the driver firmly. Take me to the airport. He arrived in the Rocky Mountains with nothing but determination. Danny had researched, made calls, and promptly traveled here. It had cost him a fortune, but he saw this as his definitive step to prove his worthiness to join the order. This would secure his place. Almost every penny he had saved was poured into this endeavor, yet he reassured himself it would pay off manifold in the end. Becoming part of the magistratus would not only solve his problems, it would obliterate them. They would elevate him to success, wealth, respect, and fear. Every desire of his heart would be fulfilled. His appointment with the surgeon covered all bases: vocal cord modification, facial reconstruction, silicone enhancements, and most crucially, gender reassignment surgery. Despite the surgeon's initial hesitation about Danny's brief transition period, a generous check swiftly convinced him. Renowned worldwide, the surgeon was known for his expertise, though he wasn't above a lucrative rush job. Within days, Danny found himself checking into a private clinic, signing away control of his fate. But Danny harbored no fear. He had spotted the man on his flight and again at the airport, an agent of the magistratus, shadowing him. He was being watched, tested. But Danny saw through their facade, understanding their game. They intended for him to proceed through surgery, under anesthesia, to the brink of no return. Yet, in his unwavering devotion to the order, they would pull him back, applauding his commitment to follow their directives. He would wake to find everything he sought within his grasp: money, power, influence, and tranquility. From now on, his life would finally be secure. It took longer than anticipated for the surgery to complete, but now that she was finally home, Kendall felt an immense sense of relief that it was all over. The procedure had been complex, especially after waking up from vaginoplasty. Things had taken a strange turn for her. Bending down to collect the mail left at her doorstep over the past weeks, she realized it was all addressed to the previous male occupant. Her white miniskirt and tight fire-red crop top would have certainly caught anyone's eye as she did so. Dumping the mail on the table, she lacked the energy to even kick off her heels before sinking into the sofa. The past days had been tumultuous. Following her complete gender reassignment surgery, which had been more eventful than expected according to the doctor, Kendall had apparently caused quite a scene and required sedation and restraint. Supposedly, she had been ranting wildly about some fraternal order, although she couldn't recall any of it now. Luckily, Paige had been a lifesaver, flying out to assist her. Several hypnotherapy sessions later, Kendall had regained her equilibrium, reconnecting with her lifelong aspiration to live authentically as a woman. Paige had expressed some concern about the haste with which Kendall had pursued surgery, but she had put that aside to support her through recovery. Finally, she was Kendall. All the effort and expense had paid off, transforming her into the beautiful woman she had always been inside. It marked the end of a long and challenging journey, one for which she knew she owed Paige a heartfelt thanks. Being home felt incredibly comforting now. However, she resolved to clean up the place tomorrow. There was no question it needed it. In fact, why not start now? Kendall emptied her trash bins into a bag and headed out into the hall to dispose of them down the chute. "Hi there." A voice greeted her from her left, the neighbor from the next door, whom she had never spoken to before. "Oh, hi." Kendall responded warmly. "I'm Susan," the lady introduced herself. "I don't think we've met, but I had to ask, where did you get those shoes?" "These?" Kendall showed them off with a smile. "They're quite nice. I used to have a pair just like them, but I sent them out for repairs a few months ago and they never came back," Susan lamented. Kendall sympathized. "That's a shame. Do you remember when they were painting the hallway?" Susan asked. "They took all the numbers off the doors, and I think everyone's deliveries got mixed up for a few days. I wondered if maybe my shoes were delivered to you by mistake." "I don't think so," Kendall replied. "I received these as a gift, I think. It's hard to remember." Just then, Kendall heard her phone ring. "Oops. That's my phone. Nice to meet you, Susan. Would you like to get together for tea sometime?" Susan smiled politely. "I'd love to. Just leave a message or stop by." "I will." Kendall waved goodbye with her fingers and grabbed her phone before it went to voicemail. "Hello," she greeted. "We are very... A deep, gravelly voice started. "We don't know what's going on with you." "Excuse me? Who is this?" "I think you have the wrong number," Kendall said, growing upset. The voice sounded weary. "Look, Danny. Since you never returned to the hall for instructions, it's over. I don't know what your issue is, but the latest information we have is troubling. Just move on with your life, whatever it is you're into. We didn't realize you were such an oddball. Forget about us." "Hey!" Kendall was thoroughly angry now. "Listen to me, you arrogant jerk. I can't change who I am inside. We all need to stay true to ourselves, and I believe people should appreciate that." Gathering herself, she continued passionately, "We need to move beyond these ignorant biases and accept people for who they are, not who we want them to be. It's attitudes like yours that make life so challenging and hurtful for others. As a society, we should be supportive, understanding, and loving toward those around us. And if your attitude is any indication, I'm deeply disappointed in our progress."